Have you ever found yourself staring at the screen, watching a politician speak a man or woman you know has lied, stolen, and manipulated, and yet you feel something strange, a pull, a fascination, even a spark of admiration? You know their words are empty, their promises false, their hands dirty, and yet you cannot look away. Why is it that the very leaders who betray trust most flagrantly are often the ones elevated as heroes, even saints? Why do you sometimes bow before those who should be exposed? Imagine a vast crowd gathered in a square, faces lit with fervor as a leader stands above them. The leader's history is a chain of corruption, yet the people chant their name as if it were sacred. And then imagine yourself in that crowd. Would you be swept up too? Or would you resist? Would you see through the spectacle? Or would you feel the intoxicating comfort of belonging, of surrendering to something greater than yourself? You sense a contradiction here, don't you? The world tells you to seek honesty, virtue, integrity. You've been taught that morality is the bedrock of society, that truth will triumph, that justice is what binds people together. And yet, history whispers a darker secret. The villains, the deceivers, the ruthless often rise higher than the noble. They are remembered not just with contempt, but with reverence. Alexander the Great was called great, not because he was kind, but because he conquered without mercy. Julius Caesar, Napoleon, dictators of modern times, all accused of cruelty, yet immortalized. Why is this so? Inside you, a tension stirs. You want to believe in good, in fairness. You want to believe that people will reject corruption when they see it. But haven't you also felt the hidden thrill of power when someone speaks with absolute authority, when someone dares to say what others are afraid to say? Haven't you sometimes admired the one who breaks the rules, who bends the law, who takes what others only dream of taking? Why does your heart respond to what your mind condemns? Could it be that the roots of this paradox lie not in politics, but in the deepest recesses of human psychology? Could it be that you, like everyone else, are drawn not merely to virtue, but to something more primal, something darker, more dangerous, more intoxicating? Nietzsche once asked whether people love truth at all, or whether they love the illusions that make life bearable. And if that is so, what if the corrupt leader offers you not truth, but a myth you secretly crave? Ask yourself, do you really want a leader who is good, or do you want one who is strong? Do you seek justice, or do you seek victory? And what if the very qualities that make someone unfit morally are the same that make them irresistible psychologically? What if your attraction to corrupt leaders is not an accident, but a revelation of your hidden desires? The crowd still roars. The leader still speaks. You feel the split within yourself. Disgust on one side, fascination on the other. This is the paradox that gnaws at you, the paradox that will not leave you until you confront it. Why do you worship those who betray you? Why do you call them heroes? To find the answer, you must journey deeper into the unseen machinery of your mind, into the hidden forces of society, into the abyss where philosophy and psychology meet. The question is not merely, why do they deceive? But why do you consent? And that question opens the door to the next chapter. You feel the tension lingering, don't you? That paradox, knowing the corruption of leaders, yet still feeling their pull gnaws at you. You want to dismiss it as weakness in other people, as if you were immune. But the truth is more unsettling. The forces that make you admire corrupt leaders are not accidents of ignorance. They are woven deep into human psychology, into culture, into philosophy itself. To understand them, you must be willing to look beneath the surface of morality, into the hidden machinery of desire and fear. Think of Nietzsche's words, "Man would rather will nothingness than not will." What does this mean for you? It means that the human soul craves direction, purpose, and intensity so desperately that even lies and corruption feel preferable to emptiness. You might tell yourself you value truth, but when faced with chaos, your instincts cry out for certainty even if it is delivered by a liar. A corrupt leader, in all their flaws, radiates something that appears more solid than your own uncertainty. And so you gravitate toward them, not because you are fooled, but because you are afraid of your own freedom. Carl Jung warned of this when he wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." Do you see the mirror here? Supporting a corrupt leader is not only about the leader, it is about avoiding the unbearable task of self-responsibility. If you surrender your will to someone else, you can escape the weight of choice. You can say, "I am only following." And in that surrender lies comfort. The leader absorbs your burden. Your chains feel like protection. This is the essence of what Nietzsche called slave morality. You want safety, predictability, and belonging. You resent those who have the courage or the ruthlessness to seize life on their own terms. So you both despise and admire them. This dual feeling, this ressentiment, is the hidden engine of your attraction. You hate them for their power, but you also long to bask in it, to imagine that through them, you too are powerful. Their victories feel like your victories. Their arrogance feels like your shield against a meaningless world. Arthur Schopenhauer once noted that people are rarely motivated by truth, but by the will to life, the blind force of survival and self-assertion. What does this mean for you? It means that a leader who lies yet embodies strength appears more aligned with life than a leader who is honest but weak. Deep down, you sense that survival has little to do with virtue and much to do with force. And so, against your conscious ideals, your subconscious leans toward the strong, even if they are corrupt. But this is not only about psychology. Society itself conspires in this attraction. Aldous Huxley observed that mass movements feed on the intoxication of belonging. When you stand in a crowd chanting the name of a leader, you feel yourself dissolve into something larger. You are no longer just you. You are part of a collective body, and that intoxication silences the nagging voice of conscience. The leader becomes a symbol, a vessel for the collective dream. And if the dream requires lies, theft, or violence, you accept it. After all, it is no longer you who bears responsibility. It is us. And us always feels righteous, no matter how corrupt. The irony is piercing, isn't it? The very leaders who steal from you also give you a sense of meaning. The very ones who deceive you also relieve you of the terror of thinking for yourself. This is why corrupt leaders are not just tolerated, but celebrated. They answer your hidden need, the need to be led, to be shielded from the chaos of freedom. Viktor Frankl once said, "Man's deepest need is to find meaning." And when you cannot bear to forge it yourself, you borrow it from those bold enough or ruthless enough to provide it. And so the problem reveals itself. It is not only that leaders are corrupt, but that corruption resonates with something inside you. It answers your hidden fears, your secret resentments, your longing to dissolve into a power greater than yourself. Sartre's warning echoes here. Man is condemned to be free, but you flee from that freedom, and in fleeing, you chain yourself willingly to those who exploit it. Do you feel the unease rising? The recognition that your worship of corrupt leaders is not merely about them, but about you? This is the hidden truth, the uncomfortable mirror. The corruption you see in them is also born from the desires, fears, and shadows within yourself. And this is only the beginning, because once you accept this, you must also face the darker reality. This hidden attraction does not only shape your feelings, it shapes entire societies, entire cultures, entire histories. The consequences stretch farther than you can imagine, and that is where the journey takes you next. You've begun to see the problem, that your attraction to corrupt leaders is not simply about them, but about something buried within you. Yet the story does not stop there. The hidden forces that pull you toward them ripple outward, shaping not just your private feelings, but the very fabric of society. What begins as a personal surrender becomes a cultural destiny, and the consequences are far darker, more insidious than you might wish to admit. Imagine waking up one morning in a world where corruption is not an exception but the rule, where truth has become a mask rather than a value. At first, you think you would notice immediately, but in reality, you wouldn't, because the shift happens gradually, silently, while you are busy applauding the strong hand of your chosen leader. Slowly, the abnormal becomes normal. The lie becomes the new common sense, and you adapt, as all human beings do. Isn't that terrifying to realize that you are built to adjust even to change? Here, psychology meets politics in a subtle trap. Cognitive biases, those invisible patterns of thought, turn you into a collaborator without you even knowing it. The halo effect makes you excuse the crimes of a leader simply because you admire their confidence. Confirmation bias ensures you notice only the stories that support your chosen hero, ignoring the evidence of theft, deceit, or brutality. And the bandwagon effect seduces you into believing that if the crowd believes, it must be true. You become complicit, not because you consciously approve of corruption, but because your very mind conspires to make obedience feel like truth. And then there is the deeper consequence, the erosion of your own sense of reality. You stop asking, what is true? Instead, you ask, what is useful for my side? What makes me feel safe? What makes me feel strong? The line between reality and illusion blurs, and slowly you live more in myth than in fact. Jean-Paul Sartre once warned that man who lies to himself and listens to his own lie comes to such a pass that he cannot distinguish the truth within him. Is that not the fate that awaits you in the shadow of corrupt leaders? To become not just deceived, but a self-deceiver? Society itself begins to rot under this condition. When corruption is celebrated, it becomes contagious. The leader steals, so the official below him steals. So the worker bends the rules. So you begin to justify your own small acts of dishonesty. Everyone does it, you tell yourself. It's just how the game works. And with each justification, the invisible web thickens until the culture itself is structured around deceit. What was once shocking becomes routine. What was once a scandal becomes the background hum of daily life. This is not just a political crisis. It is existential. Because when truth collapses in the public square, it collapses within you. You no longer know what to trust, what to believe, what to stand for. The leader's corruption has not only stolen money or power, it has stolen your orientation in reality. Aldous Huxley once wrote that the deepest sin against the human mind is to believe things without evidence. But under corrupt leadership, you do worse. You cling to belief even when evidence screams otherwise. And this reshapes your very humanity. You might think, but I would resist. I would see through the lies. Would you? History suggests otherwise. Entire nations have collapsed into catastrophe because millions of people, ordinary, intelligent, good-hearted people, convinced themselves to follow leaders they knew were corrupt. They told themselves it was temporary. It was strategic. It was necessary. They told themselves they were powerless to resist. And by the time they realized the cost, it was too late. Corruption had hollowed out not just their institutions, but their souls. Look inside yourself. Haven't you already made small compromises, tiny concessions, rationalizations that you excused in the name of comfort, convenience, or belonging? Multiply those by millions of people, and you see how civilizations fall, not with sudden destruction, but with slow surrender. That is the unseen consequence. Not simply bad leaders, but weakened people who no longer trust themselves to stand on their own. Do you feel the urgency now? This is no abstract philosophical puzzle. It is a trap in which you already stand. And unless you awaken, you will continue to tighten the chains with your own hands. The worship of corrupt leaders is not just a social sickness. It is a mirror that shows you the sickness within yourself. And yet, there is a whisper of hope here. Because if you can see the trap, you can begin to step out of it. If you can expose the hidden mechanics, you can reclaim the power you unknowingly surrendered. The question is, how? How do you rebel against this ancient, intoxicating pull? How do you break free of the myths that have bound you since the beginning of history? That question leads you to the next stage, the rebellion. The trap is clear now. You see how your own fears, resentments, and hidden desires draw you toward corrupt leaders. You see how entire societies collapse under the weight of their complicity. But the question still burns. How do you break free? How do you rebel not with weapons or riots, but with the only power that truly matters? The power of your own mind, your own spirit. The first step is the most radical. You must dare to confront your own hunger for illusion. Nietzsche warned, sometimes people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed. Can you bear to lose the comfort of those illusions? To live without the warm intoxication of belonging, without the soothing lie of someone else will decide for me? To rebel is not to overthrow the leader outside. It is to overthrow the leader within, the inner voice that begs for change. This rebellion begins in silence. Imagine yourself stepping away from the crowd, the chanting voices fading behind you. You feel the chill of solitude, the terror of your own thoughts. At first, it feels unbearable. But in that solitude, you rediscover something forgotten, your sovereignty. You begin to sense that truth, however painful, is lighter than illusion. You begin to realize that freedom, however frightening, is more dignified than obedience. Isn't this the first taste of rebellion, not shouting, not fighting, but refusing to kneel? History is filled with those who walked this path. Socrates, standing alone in Athens, refusing to flatter the powerful. Spinoza, exiled and cursed, yet quietly forging a philosophy of freedom. Dissidents under totalitarian regimes who spoke forbidden words, knowing they might be silenced forever. These figures were not saints. They were simply people who valued their inner sovereignty more than their safety. And their courage shows you that rebellion begins not with grand revolutions, but with small acts of refusal. You refuse to repeat the lie. You refuse to join the chant. You refuse to let fear dictate your conscience. But rebellion is not only about negation, it is about creation. You must build a new value system, one that is not borrowed from corrupt leaders or inherited from a conformist society. Nietzsche called this the revaluation of all values. What does that mean for you? It means questioning every moral comfort you've been handed. Do you believe kindness is always weakness? Do you believe strength requires cruelty? Do you believe obedience is safer than freedom? Each of these beliefs, if left unexamined, chains you to the very leaders you despise. Rebellion requires tearing them out, root by root, and planting new values in their place. This is where the path becomes exhilarating. Because once you stop worshiping corrupt leaders, you realize you no longer need leaders in the same way at all. You stop longing for saviors. You stop searching for fathers and masters. Instead, you begin to cultivate inner discipline, inner vision, inner power. The rebellion is not anarchic chaos. It is the creation of self-rule. It is the moment when you stop saying, "Who will lead me?" and start asking, "How will I lead myself?" Think of the counterintuitive truth here. The very freedom you once feared becomes your weapon. Corrupt leaders thrive on your weakness, your fear of standing alone. But the moment you embrace that solitude, they lose their hold on you. What can they offer you if you no longer crave illusions? What can they threaten you with if you no longer fear freedom? When you rebel in this way, you do not merely oppose them, you make them irrelevant. And here lies the deeper secret. True rebellion is contagious. Just as corruption spreads, so does courage. When you dare to stand apart, others notice. When you refuse to chant, others hesitate before chanting. When you speak truth in a culture of lies, you ignite something ancient in those who hear you. One person stepping out of the crowd becomes two, then three, then a movement. And suddenly, the leader who seemed untouchable begins to tremble, not because you destroyed them with force, but because you destroyed their myth. Do you feel it? That surge of power, that forbidden joy? It is the taste of inner sovereignty. You are no longer the worshiper, no longer the follower. You are the one who dares to see clearly, the one who dares to stand alone, the one who dares to create. This is rebellion, not against one corrupt leader, but against the entire system of dependency that made their rule possible. And yet, even this is not the end, because rebellion, for all its power, is still only a beginning. Once you have broken free, you face the hardest task of all, discovering the ultimate truth that lies beyond both obedience and rebellion. That final revelation waits for you, the insight that changes not only how you see leaders, but how you see existence itself. You have walked far already. You have seen the paradox that draws you to corrupt leaders. You have uncovered the hidden psychological roots, the unseen consequences, and even the first taste of rebellion. But now you arrive at the threshold of the deepest question. What lies beyond rebellion? What truth emerges when you strip away every illusion, every craving for saviors, every hidden desire for chains? What remains when you stand naked before existence itself? Here is the final, most unsettling realization. The leader you worshipped was never merely a person out there. They were the projection of something inside you. The corrupt leader is not just a figure on a stage. They are the embodiment of your own hunger for power, your own fear of freedom, your own longing for myth. To despise them without confronting this within yourself is only to repeat the cycle with another face, another name. The final rebellion is not against leaders at all. It is against your own inner slavery. Nietzsche called this the will to power, the fundamental drive of life itself. He did not mean political domination or petty control. He meant the deep, surging force within you that seeks to expand, to overcome, to create. Corrupt leaders hijack this force, reflecting back to you a distorted image of your own power. You admire them because they mirror what you fear to claim in yourself. Isn't that the ultimate irony? You chase shadows of strength in others, while abandoning the possibility of strength within. The truth, then, is as liberating as it is terrifying. You do not need to worship anyone, because the power you seek has always been yours. When you stop projecting it outward, when you stop handing it to those unworthy of it, you begin to reclaim it. And with that reclamation comes a new kind of leadership, not of nations, but of the self. You become, in Nietzsche's words, the creator of new values. You cease to be a follower, a worshiper, even a rebel. You become a builder. But here lies the paradox that defines existence. With this freedom comes unbearable responsibility. Sartre's words return. Man is condemned to be free. To claim your own power means no longer blaming corrupt leaders for your fate, no longer waiting for saviors, no longer hiding in the crowd. It means owning every choice, every failure, every possibility. This is not the easy path of comfort, but the sharp edge of truth. And yet, is it not the only path worthy of you? Imagine it now, a life where you no longer bow to idols of power, no longer intoxicate yourself with the myth of the strong leader. Instead, you shape your own values, your own meaning. You live not as a servant of illusions, but as an artist of existence. Does that not feel like the forbidden truth you've been searching for all along, that you were never powerless, only unwilling to bear the weight of your own power? The ultimate truth is not that leaders deceive you, but that you have allowed yourself to be deceived. The ultimate truth is not that society worships corruption, but that you secretly longed for someone else to carry the burden of existence. And the final realization is that you can step out of this cycle at any moment if you dare to take responsibility for your own life. As Viktor Frankl wrote, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Do you see it now? The worship of corrupt leaders is not a tragedy of politics alone. It is a mirror of the human condition. And the only way to shatter that mirror is to embrace the terrifying, exhilarating freedom of self-mastery. You are not condemned to kneel. You are not destined to follow. You are capable of becoming what Nietzsche called the Bermensch, not a tyrant, not a monster, but a human who creates meaning where none was given, who lives fully without illusion, who bears the responsibility of freedom with courage. And so, you stand at the end of this journey, yet also at its beginning. The crowd roars in the distance, but you no longer belong to it. The leader speaks, but their voice no longer binds you. You have glimpsed a truth more powerful than their lies, that the ultimate authority, the ultimate power, the ultimate meaning resides within you. Will you carry this realization into your life? Will you dare to live without idols, without illusions, without the intoxication of false heroes? That is the question left to you now. The answer is not written here. It is waiting in the choices you make when this screen fades, when the voices of the crowd call again, when the shadow of corruption tempts you with its familiar comfort. The journey ends in words, but begins in the silence where you decide whether to remain a worshiper or to become free.